the expert service provider, and so it's a complex process, and there's a lot of ways for things to go well and for things not to go well, and as I mentioned earlier, it's I think in many ways it's very different than buying a product, and so that's that's the gist of our book, and why we felt it was important to talk more about that.
So how do clients buy professional services?
Well, let me back up just one step from that, and I'll just share with you this this example that I use when I speak to groups, and that is, why is it that we can buy a home or another large purchase? You can spend $500,000 on a house after a 1-hour walkthrough, and yet if you were looking to design a home, you might agonize for months over choosing just the right architect to work with to build your house. Why is that? Why can you buy a house in an hour or a car in an hour, and yet you'll spend weeks or months or longer agonizing over which financial advisor to use or which architect, and so forth. And I think the biggest difference is in what is versus what could be. And I think that in buying or hiring an expert, it takes a much bigger leap of faith, and it feels riskier. It feels scarier. There's so much more uncertainty. So I think there's a level of relationship. I think there's a level of respect and trust and a human connection that is a part of the client's buying journey that is maybe not present to the same extent when you're buying a house or a car or another large purchase. So I think that's a big part of it. The other thing I would say is clients buy in much the same way that you and I buy or hire an expert. And if you think about that carefully and for a long period of time, it really comes down to, we tend to hire people that we know, respect, and trust. And that's the short version. We go into a longer version in our book, which we call the 7 elements. But I think that kind of gets at the core of the people that we tend to hire, is those people that we know, respect, and trust, and have a personal relationship with.
Well, you can actually equate this to your own life. I mean, if you're just listening and you don't actually have any buying authority, let's say, it's like, think about how you choose people. Who do you decide to marry, and who do you decide to date? Who do you decide to watch your kids? That sort of thing. Choosing people is always harder than choosing a tangible product.
Well, exactly right. I mean, when we're thinking about products, for example, it's tangible. In many cases, there's specifications, there's attributes, there's features, there's warranties, there's promotions. There may be a brick and mortar component to it, or an e-commerce component to it, but oftentimes, there's a very skilled, customer related person that's working through that buying decision with you. But it's very different than, when we're buying an expert service, which, it's intangible, and it's based upon the perception of reputation and credibility and thought leadership and relationships and respect and trust. And those are just squishy topics that I think takes a while to kind of ferment in our bellies before we get to that point where we're ready to make a commitment.
Because we're called the Manage Smarter podcast, I have to ask the question, if you have a best practice for, let's say a listener has his own business but isn't getting very many referrals, and so is trying to execute the work and go after new business and get the clients to buy, referencing the book. How many hours a week, or should you time chunk out half a day a week? What's the most effective way to go at this for a manager?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it depends on where you are in your career. For example, or in the evolution of your firm. So if you are coming right out of the gates and you don't have many clients or you don't have any clients, you could spend a lot of time on business development. Maybe all of your time on business development related activities. I think someone more further along in their career, I don't think I don't think successful rainmakers spend any less than 20% of their time on business development. So if that's 2 or 3 hours a day or 1 day a week that you've got blocked out for it. But I think one of the things that we learned from the research for our book, and in our book we shared our own experiences, my co-author Tom McMakin and I, but we also interviewed 40 highly successful rainmakers from a wide variety of industries, professional services for our book. And one of the things we learned from these interviews is all of the successful rainmakers are highly disciplined at scheduling business development. And, many people start their day and they do not get into client work until they have spent 2 or 3 hours doing business development related activities, whether that be following up with prospective clients or working on thought leadership pieces or calling people that you would like to meet. And then other people, maybe they chunk off Friday and they say, hey, Friday is my business development day. So I don't think there's one necessarily right schedule or approach. But, back to your original question, I think it could range anywhere from 20 to 80% of your time, just depending upon where you are in your development.
And also going to Audrey's question, I will also have to add the very worst thing you can do is devote zero time to it and think, I've got all the business I need. I've got, I don't need to worry about business development right now. It's like you always have to worry about business development because in the blink of an eye, you could find yourself needing business. And it takes time to do that business development. It's not like you can just go out and pick up the phone and make a few calls and say, okay, great, I've developed my business, in a day or a week or something like that. It takes... it depends, I guess, on what the service you're selling, right? It can take months, right?
Well, that's exactly right. Many of these, much of what we do has long sales, and you can't expedite trust. And so if it's a brand new prospective client, someone that you just met, it could take months or longer, a year or more before you get to that opportunity where you get the chance to work with them. But rare, if ever, do you have a call with a new prospective client and you're working for them by the end of the week, right? That just it just doesn't happen very often. So these relationships take time to build, and it's something that we need to be doing often and continuously, because it could be months before we convert someone that we would like to serve into a paying client.
You talk about service, character, and help, and that's sort of the trinity of the approach to enticing a client to buy what you're selling. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of this might be blasphemous to bring this up on this wonderful podcast, but one of the things we learned from these interviews with these 40 plus highly successful rainmakers was that the original working title of our book was how to sell professional services, or selling professional services, or something to that effect, and it was just a working title. But when we interviewed these rainmakers, they had a negative, visceral reaction to us calling what they did selling. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like they wanted to jump through the phone and strangle us. They were visually or viscerally upset, and we came to label this, the rainmaker's mindset. But it's like they did not believe in their heart of hearts that they were selling. They experts at a particular topic, and they were serving other people. They were helping people define and understand their problems and needs, and they were there to help serve them. And so we kind of, from that, we kind of, developed this mantra of, service, not selling, help, not hype, and character, not charisma. And just genuinely trying to be helpful and caring is what we labeled this Rainmaker mindset. And it's what they believe in their bones. It's not just like crazy talk. It's they perceive that's what they're doing. And I think it's an important distinction.
I'm sitting here nodding my head. I'm thinking, you just defined what sales is.
Right? Yes. And
Yeah.
and you guys, you guys work, I mean, you talk to a lot of highly successful people, and many of them may be in product sales. And I have never been in product sales. I've, except maybe like Boy Scouts in high school or something. But, I've spent my life in professional services. So, maybe what we're writing about does translate to products. Maybe it's not that different after all.
Yeah.
And the thing is, professional services are not commodities. They're the farthest thing from it. So it's not like, I'm going to give you an hour of my time or something like that. I need to be compensated for it because I can't scale that. Once that hour is gone, it's gone. A product, on the other hand, though, it's like I can just manufacture 1,000 more of them and sell them.
Well, that's exactly right.
Well, I just changed CPAs. I had this CPA for 11 years and fired him, and I got a new guy through a referral from a trusted colleague. And so there it is right there. And I went up and met with them this week, and the service levels were excellent. For me, it's all about the service level and being over-serviced and service in the way you'd like to be serviced,
Yeah.
What sells it for me.
Yeah, and you touched on an interesting topic there. The value of a referral from a trusted colleague. We prospective clients tend to hire people they know, respect, and trust. But in some cases, you might not know the person that you should be speaking with, and in many cases, we might ask a close friend or colleague, is like, who's your accountant? Who are you working with? Who do you think I should be talking to? That the trust that exists between two friends or colleagues becomes the proxy for the trust between you and that prospective accountant. And you showed up at that individual's office already on second or third base, right? You had long crossed first base because your close friend said, go see Sarah, Tom, they're really good. And that goes a long way in the professional services.
For sure.
How do you get referrals?
I'll be honest with you. I am not great. I'm not proactive at asking for referrals, and I know that some people are much, much better at this. I think that if you focus on doing the very best work you can possibly do and making it uncertain in every way that the client's interest is in your interest is in the client's best interest, and you're looking out for them and you're doing great work, the referrals will come. And there's nothing wrong with asking for referrals. I don't like to ask for referrals generically, say something to the effect, hey, I'd love it for you to recommend me to others. But what I will say is that if there's a specific person that I want to meet that I know is friends or colleagues with an existing client, and I feel like I've earned the right to ask for that referral or that introduction, I might call, Audrey and say, hey, listen, I know Lee, you guys work together. I'd really like to get to know Lee better. Would you be willing to introduce us? I feel more comfortable doing that.
My friend Jeffrey Gedimer likes to say that the best way to get referrals is to give a referral. How does that sound to you?
Well, I think the basis of human relationships is reciprocity. I think all relationships, to a certain extent, whether it's a personal relationship with a significant other or a friend or a client or prospective client, it has to be based on reciprocity. And it doesn't have to be like you keep a ledger in your desk drawer, and it's like, well, what has Lee done for me today, sort of thing. But I think, I think that relationships are built on wanting to help one another.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm doing great work for you and I'm bringing value to your firm or your work, I don't think, in a close relationship, it's inappropriate to say, hey, could you introduce me to Audrey, or something to that effect.
Well, let me help you with some referrals. The website for Doug's coaching, training, and speaking services. What a transition!
That was really good.
FletcherandCompany.net. And the book, How Clients Buy, available on Amazon. Doug, this has been very interesting, and I hope we've motivated our listeners to really, up their biz dev game as a result of having you on the show.
Well, I hope so too. And keep up the good work. I love your podcast, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.